Welcome to the Path to Mindset Mastery. My name is Brad Bizjack. I'm a mindset strategist and coach, inspirational speaker, and creator of Appreciation Academy. And I help people maximize their life, maximize their mindset, and take all parts of their life to a whole nother level. And today is all about how to solve your most challenging problems. Whatever it is, whatever you're going through, if you're facing really tough things in your family, if you're facing really hard things in your business, in your finances, whatever it is, how to solve your most challenging problems. This is one of the strategies that I personally use that has made a significant impact on my life. And am I perfect at it? Hell no, I'm not perfect at it. But whenever I apply this, it takes every part of my life to a new level. Before we dive in, if you find value in this podcast today, make sure you give us a written rating and review. Absolutely love it when I see feedback come through that this has served you and helped you in some way. And if you really love this content, make sure to subscribe below. There's so many ways to get in touch with us, and they're linked up right below this podcast. So many ways to opt in and receive this weekly content. I'll be able to email you a new podcast episode every single week when it's released. And so, have you ever noticed, as we dive into this stuff today, have you ever noticed that someone could say something to you a million times and you listen and you hear it, and then every once in a while someone else says it and all of a sudden it clicks? But have you ever noticed, I mean that's obvious, but have you ever noticed that when it clicks and someone else says it, it's typically in alignment with the advice you've given other people before in this similar situation? And what I mean by that is I consistently find myself going through challenges in my business, in my life, and trying to overcome them. And when I seek counsel on them, which everyone should be doing, seeking counsel on your challenges and different things that you're going through, what I find is that when I seek counsel and someone tells me the solution where I'm like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense, it's typically the solution that I would have given myself if I were giving it, or if the solution I would have given someone else if I were giving advice. And so the reason I share that with you is because one of the biggest, easiest, simplest ways to solve your most challenging problems that you have going on in your life, no matter what it is, whether it's marriage stuff or business stuff or money stuff or any of it, the biggest, simplest, easiest way to solve your most challenging problems is to give yourself advice as if you were your own client. Because when we're in the thick of it, and we're in the, you already know the answer to your most challenging problems. And if you truly don't know the answer, there's Google available, right? There's ways to solve the problems, but we typically don't allow ourselves to go there. When we're deep in the problem, it's like we have this storm above us, right? And it's raining down on us, and it's taking all this energy, and we're caught up in the storm, and we're hiding, and we're tired, and we're stressed, and we're fearful of getting struck by lightning or getting blown in the wind. But if you've ever been, following the metaphor, have you ever been in an airplane? And by the way, can an airplane take off when it's storming outside? Yes, it can. An airplane can take off. And what happens every single time an airplane goes up and goes through the clouds? It's always sunny. What I mean by that, it's always clear. It's always clear. The storm is still happening. You've just now elevated above it. And that's what you can do when you give yourself advice as if you were your own client. So this requires taking an objective look and removing the emotion of it for a second. So take whatever challenge you're facing in your life right now, and I want you to ask yourself, if I were giving advice to someone else about how to solve this problem, what would I tell them to do? What would I tell them to say? How would I tell them to react or respond? What would be the answer to that question if you were to pinpoint it? If you were to say that, if you were to give advice to another client, because chances are that's what you should be doing in your own life with your own challenges. But when we face our own challenges, have you ever noticed that it feels significant to us? Meaning it feels more challenging for us, or harder for us, or different for us, where if that advice were told to us, it's like, no, this is my situation. This is so much harder for me. One of the biggest challenging things that I see so many people go through on their pathway to success is they think their situation is different or harder. All human behavior is just patterns. That's all it is. And no matter what your situation is, you might have your own little special spice or flair in your situation. but it's not that significantly different from what other people are facing. It just feels that way in the moment because you're just being pounded by the storm of life instead of taking off and elevating above that storm. And that's what I encourage you to do when you're trying to solve your deepest, most challenging problems. I challenge you to elevate above the storm that you're facing. If we don't ever listen to our own advice, if we don't ever pause and ask ourselves, what advice would I give someone else in this situation? If we don't listen to that, there's a reason for it. Have you ever noticed that it's really easy to give other people advice, but it's a lot more challenging to listen to that same advice yourself? The reason for that is because it feels good to have a way out of taking responsibility for our challenges. If I don't have that many challenges, for example, and I'm someone that's happy on a regular basis, and I'm just always go lucky, and not saying I don't face challenges, but I'm always just positive through them. If that happens in my life, then I'm always just seeming like I'm smiling through everything, right? What am I perceived as? Crazy. But have you ever noticed that when you have a problem, you get rewarded for it? You ever notice that? When you have a problem, you become one of the gang. You get sympathy from other people. You get connection from other people when you have a problem too. The biggest addiction in life is not drugs, it's not alcohol, it's not pornography, it's not sex, it's not any of that. The biggest addiction in life is to our problems. We are addicted to our problems because when we tell ourselves these stories in our head over and over and over again about why we can't get out of our situation, it feels good. There's something called confirmation bias, right? Where we're always seeking out ways to prove what we already know is true. And so if you have a story playing in your head about how it's harder for you, or this person makes it tougher for you, or it's more challenging in some way, shape, or form, you will do everything you possibly can to prove that story true. It feels rewarding to tell ourselves a story because when we tell ourselves a story, it gives us a way out of taking responsibility. And when we don't take responsibility for our challenges, and they're because of someone else, because of our husband, because of our wife, because of the money situation, because of our business, because of our career, because of our family, because of our mom, because of our dad, when it's because of someone else, it's really, really appealing. That's a victim mindset. Victim mindsets are really, really appealing because it gives us a way out of facing what we're afraid of. Because the minute you take responsibility for your life, and the minute you say, you know what, I'm going to own that, I'm going to listen to my own advice, I'm going to go for it, it means that you have to confront what you're afraid of. It means you have to show up and say, you know what, I am scared, but I'm going to take action anyways. I'm going to do something to change these circumstances. And so if you ever don't listen to your own advice, that's why. It feels good to not listen to our advice, and it's our own advice, and it's rewarding to have a way out. It's so rewarding. It's an easier path. But remember, the path of least resistance never leads to a prideful life. I am a firm believer that you see what everyone else is doing and you sprint the opposite way. You pave your own path. So one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give you with whatever challenge you're facing is listen to your own advice. Take a second and just pause. Remove the emotion. Say, okay, I'll allow myself to feel the emotions of this. Just give me a second. And if I were giving myself advice, if I were my own client, what would I tell myself? And take responsibility for making that change. And if you don't, it's because the story playing in your head is rewarding you in some way, shape, or form. And that's okay. There's no judgment for that. We all do it. But we need to realize that if we're rewarding that story in our head that limits us, it doesn't take our lives to the next level. It doesn't take us to the place where we actually want to be. It just feels good temporarily. It's short-term pleasure for long-term pain because we never actually solve the challenge that we're going through. We just find a way out of taking responsibility so we get a little bit of relief instead of solving the actual problem. I am challenging you to solve the actual problem today by being your own client. We need to listen to our own advice in the situation because you already know how to solve your problem or direction on how to solve that problem. There's something in your heart that says, I can do that, but there's a fear. If you're not listening to the advice, it's probably because it feels good, and there's probably a fear playing in your mind about what happens when you take responsibility. What happens when you say something? What happens when you voice a concern? What happens when you play all out? What happens when? And it's just that we're scared. We're scared of making this change because that limiting story, it feels good and it's all we've ever known. And there's no stronger force in the human personality than staying consistent with who we already think we are. We need to change that if we want to change our life. That's my challenge for you today, my friend. Be your own client. That is how you solve one of your most challenging problems with whatever you are facing. Be your own client. Give yourself advice. Take an objective look and say, if I were giving advice to someone else, here's how I would solve that. So I hope this short little podcast episode served you today. I hope you found value in this. Make sure if you found value in this short podcast, give us a rating and review. Absolutely love it seeing those stars come through and seeing your written reviews about how this is serving you and helping you change your life. And if you really love this content, if you want to get weekly updates from me on a regular basis, I send out an email every single Wednesday at 7 a.m. saying, hey, new podcasts available for you. There's so many ways to get in touch, but one of the ways that you can do that is subscribing. There's a link below to subscribe to our podcast to be able to get those reminders on a regular basis. So I hope this served you today. Be your own client. Go out there today and every day and live your life with a genuine smile on your face. My name is Brad Bizjack. I'll see you next week.